So this evening's speaker, I'd like to introduce Gaurav. He is with a cybersecurity unicorn. Unicorn being a company that has over $1 billion uh, in valuation. That's not an easy thing to do. There are in the cybersecurity space last year, there were only a little over 30 cybersecurity unicorns coming out of the startup space. So that's quite an accomplishment. And during that journey, I'm sure that he's learned a great deal. So he's here to share some of that wisdom with us. With that, I'll hand off. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Tom. Pleasure to meet you all. I'll go ahead. Tom, you'll have to give me the screen share permissions. Let me try
Liz,
that.
can you?
Or if you could make me the co-host, I could try that.
Yeah, Liz, can you?
Okay.
Yes, I am looking for
Okay,
him
thank
right
you,
now.
Liz.
All right, Gaurav, let's go ahead and grab you as, I don't have the settings, Tom, to do the co-host, but I'm gonna add him for the spotlight. So can you do the piece for making him co-host?
Probably not. I'll keep trying here, but my machine is.
I think if you hover over Gaurav's name, you will see 3 dots. And when you go to those 3 dots, it gives you an option to make him a co-host.
Yeah, it doesn't have the settings for me. So that's why I was thinking maybe Tom can do that.
1 second here.
Just like how we do it for every other session.
There, try that and see if that worked.
Yes, this worked, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Okay, awesome. I think hopefully you're seeing the right screen. Can now see your screen. So hopefully you're seeing the presenter mode screen.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Or you're seeing not the presenter mode, the actual screen without the notes and all of that. So, okay, awesome. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me here and giving me the opportunity to talk here to all of you today. I am very super excited about this topic, and I hope we can make this session profoundly impactful for you. You know, at the end of the session, would love to have your feedback on what you thought about the session and the questions. Throughout the session, please feel free to, you know, if you have questions, don't hold back. You can actually go ahead and put it into the chat. I'll try to answer any questions that come along my way as we go along. And you know, one of the goals for me with this session is you may be here, whatever here means for you. It may be that you're new to the field, you're trying to break in. It could be that you are a seasoned product person and you're just looking to transition to another role, or it could be you're in between opportunities. And so whatever here is and whatever your there is, my hope is through this session, we can really do something that you'll find useful to take you from here to there, and that here and there is your per your definition. And here's a quick agenda from for meeting today. Introductions, Tom. Thank you for introducing myself. So I'll skip over that most of it. You know, the process and the framework. So what I want to do is I want to share with you a quick framework around as you think about evaluating the opportunity, as you think about, you know, as you go in to look for a new role in the product management space, and for that matter, any space. So I want to share that framework and a process how you can approach it. I would also like to share, you know, what does a day in the life of a PM looks like, right? And some of this is you're going to say, okay, I know that, but you know, I think it is important because as we think about hiring and hiring managers, as they're looking at someone who they're going to bring in and make them as a part of their team, just looking at that, recapturing that, I think could be quite fascinating. And then we'll leverage the framework I'm going to go ahead and do this sort of live. I have pre-populated it, so I'm not going to move things around, but I will show you. We'll look at a job posting from Calendly. Calendly, they are a scheduling company. And anyhow, so we'll look at it. I picked it up at random some time ago. I put it in there, and we'll say, how do we go about at looking at that job description? Just looking at that and see how do we fully form our story around that job description. So that's the agenda for today. Tom, you introduced me, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this slide let me go next to some of the three principles that I want to share with you as we look for as you look for the new role. And it is understanding I think it is important to understand them because some of this is as we think about job search, and some people may have been recent in this area, and some people are just getting into anyhow. So, first principle in my mind is when we look at a job search, it is always about them, and it's not about us. I've been very fortunate in a sense that I've interviewed probably hundreds more than 100 candidates at this point. And a lot of times, people come in and they are talking about themselves with no context of what the person on the other side needs. So just, I think one of the things to remember is that it's about them. And as we look at the framework, we will see how we can connect with that. The second thing is, the companies hire people to solve specific problems, to do certain things. So we got to be solution focused. We need to understand what are the problems that people are trying to solve. We need to see what is the opportunity they are looking at, and then see how we can be one of those folks who can come in and solve it for them. And last but not least, I want to bring up is creating value in every interaction. And I think this is very important. So imagine you go into an interview, right? Most of the times, and most of the times when people go for the interviews, the first time you talk or meet with a person is you go in and it's like, hey, my name is this, and you'll have a discussion, you introduce yourself. But what if before the interview itself, you send out an email to the person, hey, I'm going to meet with you, I'm super excited about it. Would love to know if there are items that are top of mind for you. And, I would love to come in prepared and we can talk about it. The person may respond, they may or may not respond. For example, when I am meeting with candidates myself personally, I share with them, I say, look, these are top of mind items for me. And you may have other things. So when we talk together, we can try to be very focused. And also when I go and talk to people, when I'm looking for a position, I'd say, look, here are the things that are top of mind for me. There may be some other things that are top of mind for you. Would love to have a conversation together. Because what you want to do during an interview is there is sometimes this game you have. Imagine there is a table and you have an interviewer who is sitting on one side of the table, and you've got the interviewee who's on the other side of the table, and then there's a ping pong game that happens. The person has a question and you answer. They have a question and you answer. And what you want to do is you don't want to have that dynamic. What you want to have is a dynamic when you're both sitting on the same side of the table and you're looking at something, whatever that thing is, it's a problem or whatever it is. It's like, okay, let's look at this and let's see how we can solve this, right? You're trying to get into this market space. You're trying to see with this specific product line, I want to generate $5 million in revenue. It's like, okay, let's talk about it. And if you have a little bit of that advanced information, you can do it. So creating value in every interaction, what I suggest is being a little bit prepared, being a little bit proactive. Once, before the discussion, reach out to people, talk to them, align, see how you can create value. And after you had a discussion, after you had the interview discussion, go back to folks and say, look, we talked about it. Based on what I understood, my synthesis is that you're really interested in doing this, and this article caught my eye, and I just wanted to share with you. And if I were to do this, here's I mentioned some of these things, but here would be my recommendation. Or put one pager. It will set you apart from the rest of the folks because many times people will come into an interview, they'll have that chat, and now they're kind of they're hoping that it'll be successful. By doing some of those things, you can take control of the outcomes. Um, all right. So as I mentioned, we want to look at a process, and what we want to do today is it's a three-step process. We're going to look at the process from the standpoint of we're going to look at a job description. It's a generic job description. I picked it up from LinkedIn. We're going to look at that, and we're going to rearrange the job description. We're going to bucketize the whole piece into different buckets, into 4 buckets specifically. So we'll look at that. We'll reframe some of these things, and we'll state some of the things that the company has actually asked. We'll reframe, state those things in our own words, and then we go ahead and rehearse them. I mean, we may or may not have the ability to do the full piece here with the practice delivery, but eventually I would recommend you rehearse the whole piece, as I will show you a canvas. With that, let me show to you a visual canvas framework. The visual canvas framework is essentially this. As you look at a job function or you look at a role, look at what are the core functions that they are looking at, right? So there are some things that they require you to do. If you think about product management, there are, depending on the company, right, there are different ways people are approaching this. Some companies are looking at a product manager and they need someone to come in, and all they are going to do is they are there to accept feature requests, look at the bugs that are being reported, put them, figure out, how do we want to prioritize certain things, get them into a release. And that's all what they are able to do given their place in the organization. Some other organizations, you're coming in and you are really coming in from a place where you need to come up with a vision and mission, and you need to think about, you're trying to envision where the market would be in the next 5 years. And based on that, you're going to say, okay, this is where the market would be. This is where we want to be. This is going to be our strategic competitive differentiation, and this is how we're going to position our company. So this is still a product manager title by definition, but a very different role. In some places, this role is actually technical, where they're expecting, companies like Meta and some of those places, they expect that as a product manager, you have been developer in your past where you can actually code. So you come in, you can do the prototype yourself, and you can come in. It's like, okay, this is a prototype, and if it makes sense, now you go and work with engineers to build something which is scalable. In some other places, you're coming in, and over there, you are really thinking not from the standpoint of any of the technical part. You're thinking more about user research. You're more of an anthropologist. So understanding what exactly is the company looking for. Again, the same title, product manager, product director, head of product, but the way the function is envisioned may be very different depending on the company you're going in. So understanding that core function, and then when you think about those core function, think about what have been your recent accomplishments, right, in terms of the core function that the company needs, and put them into the visual canvas. The second thing is product management is probably the most cross-functional role in a company, right? On one hand, the product managers are talking to sales, they're talking to engineers, they're talking to finance, they are talking to marketing, they're talking to customer success, they're talking to executives. So you're talking to pretty much every single function in the company. They're talking to G&A and all of that stuff, right? So when you have such a strong, such an interconnected web within which you operate, the piece around managing relationships and managing stakeholders and influencing people without actually having direct authority over people becomes very important. So in this case, as you go through the interview process, you can expect many times that you may have a cross section of stakeholders you're going to talk to during the interview process. And how do you tailor a message based on who you're actually interacting with becomes also important. As you look at this piece, under the line here, there are opportunities and challenges as you think about interacting with, for example, sales. What you want to do is, as you look at this, as you're looking at this job description, you can, in many times, look at things and you can come up with, based on what I have read here, I think this is the set of challenges they are facing, right? So come in, write in, what do you think the company has a challenge? What is the opportunity they have? Now, when you're talking to the salesperson, ask them, when I think about this specific role, where do you think there is friction as you come in and you try to sell in the market as it relates to the product? What holds us back? What do you think you want to see in the product that can actually propel us into the next orbit? So when you put some of these things in this context and as you interact with them, I think it becomes more compelling. The third piece here is the results, right? So the company, as you think about it, end of the day, anyone who's hiring us, they are looking for us to deliver certain outcomes, and part of it is what is our unique value proposition. And if you were to ask me, what is a product manager's unique value proposition, any product manager's unique value proposition, their value proposition should be getting stuff done, right? In an environment, whatever environment you're in, whether it is a technical focused company, whether it is you're an anthropologist, whatever it is your role is, getting things done is the primary function. So understanding what are the results the company expect us to deliver, what is our unique value proposition in this, right? And stating that out loud for the company during the interview process, bubbling those things up that match with what the company needs. I think that is important. Underneath here, there is, as you think about it, there are stories and narratives. By stories, by the way, I'm not saying we make up stories. What I essentially mean is we need to have a narrative. And the narrative is when you say, look, I mean, I have been able to do this, I have done this, I'm amazing at this. There is always that believability gap because people are like, okay, now tell me how you did it. So having a narrative that you already have formulated is actually quite useful. So what I want to do is I want to pivot a little bit onto a topic which is about product hiring process. What is a typical product hiring process? And some of you are hiring managers and you'll be like, yes, it is. And of course, there is no universal process, but let's take a look at a high level. So give me a second. I'll change my screen. All right. So hopefully you can still see my screen here. Product manager hiring process. Awesome. Thank you. So what you would typically have is, again, this is a generic process, and your process with different companies may be a little bit different. There'll be a recruiter screening you. You get approached on LinkedIn or you apply for a role. You may talk to a recruiter. Step one, the recruiter says, okay, do you check all the boxes? They move you to the next stage. You have a phone or a Zoom screening with the hiring manager or another member of the team. So that's the second part. In many companies, they'll give you a homework exercise. So you take that exercise home, you work on that, and that brings you into the core round. Once you have done some of this work, it's like, okay, we'll bring you on site, or we will do a remote session where you're going to talk to people one after the other, right? You may talk to the other product managers during this discussion. You may talk to the hiring manager. I think you will talk to the hiring manager during this piece. You may talk to engineering. I think you will most likely talk to engineering during the discussion. And you may also talk to skip level managers. And you may have other cross section of people who might talk. There may be a salesperson or something like that that might also come in. And if all of this checks out, people after the discussion, they'll confer with each other. And if everything checks out, they'll say, okay, let's formulate an offer. And everything aligns, background check, and you have first day at work. So that's the sort of a generic process, generic hiring process that you have for a product person. And this is, by the way, very similar for a product manager to a product leader. In case of product leader, the change here might be that you are probably talking to the board, right? For a startup, you might be talking to one of the board members. The difference here may be that the sourcing probably did not happen where you applied for a role, but someone did a background check and you got connected in that. But the process would probably look somewhat similar that way. Now, this is the process. What I want to do is next, I want to very quickly, pivot into a day in the life of a product manager, or what exactly a product manager does. So let's go here, and in a PM's life, what do people product managers really do, on a day-to-day basis? So what I have here is a set of things, and let me make this a little bit smaller, and I'll make it bigger in a second. So if you think about the product manager's activities, the product manager activities are typically driven by a core mission, right? And I don't mean a core mission in the sense, Facebook may have a core mission to connect everybody on the planet Earth, in that sense. Your mission may be that you are trying to get $5 million in incremental revenue from this specific new product that you've been tasked to launch with. That may be your core mission that you're working on, right? Your mission may be that you are, in the next 6 months, we need to reduce our security debt that we have on our product, right? That's your core mission. So when you think about the core mission, then if you look up there are 4 buckets within which I would say the product manager's work is going to fall in. The first bucket is vision, strategy, and research. And in this case, you're thinking about things like, if it is too small, let me know, I can make it a little bit bigger. So the first bucket is going to be vision, strategy, and research. The second bucket is going to be design. The third one here is execution. And the fourth one is stakeholder management. So those are the 4 buckets within which your work will actually will fall in. This is, of course, a generic description. And in some cases, you'll have emphasis on one bucket or the other. So let's look at vision, strategy, and research. So assume you're launching a new product. You've been asked that we want to launch a new product in this new space, and you're in charge for that. So the pieces such as market and demand sizing, go there, do some market research, understand what's the total addressable market, how much can we carve out, how much can we carve out in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That could be one of the things you might be doing. Competitive analysis: who are the competitors, what are their strong points, what can be our unique value proposition, something that will differentiate us from competitors and be compelling enough that the customers will come, right? It could be customer prospect demands. It could be time horizon planning. It could be feature functions as you think about that, and trade-offs with everything that we do. What is the trade-off if you take this decision versus that decision, and things like that. So that's the vision, strategy, planning bucket within your work may fall. If you think about it, at the crux of it, this is essentially a go forward outline / high level roadmap that you will say, okay, this is what I think we can do. In this, when you think about this set of things that product managers do, product strategy and roadmap skills are the fundamental piece that you need. So that's one skill that you need, set of skills that you need as a product manager. The second bucket is the design bucket, right? And I don't mean designers. Designers are doing the mock-ups and all of that. What I really mean is creative sculpting. You think about the problem space and you say, okay, in this problem space, if we do this and we sculpt these things this way, I think we have a really great shot. This is my vision, right? Workflow interconnection. How do these pieces connect together? When a customer comes in, they come in here, they go here, they go here, they go there. How do these things connect with each other? That'll be the other one. Presentation. How are we going to present ourselves to our customers? What kind of messaging we'll have for the customers and things like that. And then feature function trade-offs will also play into this. What do we want to do, want to have, what are the trade-offs? In this bucket, for a product manager, you're essentially the skills you're thinking about as prototyping skills, right? How can we do something? Can we do a MVP very quickly, a minimum viable product, and then iterate over it quickly? Some companies want to do that way. Other companies who are, and especially, if you're in a, their companies whose philosophy is, go fast, break fast, build, and continue iterate. That's one philosophy of companies. The other companies are going to be, if you're in a large company, that may not be the philosophy because there's a lot on stake. And in that case, we have to be steady, depending on what the environment is. But then over here, the set of skills as a product manager, you're thinking about things like design thinking. You're thinking about things about lean principles, how to leverage them. And that's the second bucket of things as you look at that. The third piece, which is probably the most prominent piece people think about product managers, is about the execution. And up here, execution is, you got certain things that you need to do. You need to think about the feasibility and prioritization. You need to think about effort estimations and skills inventory. We want to build this, but do we have the engineers who can do this? Or do we need to get a third party to help us with this? Gap analysis, again, feature and functions. This is what the customer wants. This is where we are. Can we do it in the time frame? And then, you can think about gap analysis from feature function, but also from technical debt, security debt, any other kind of a debt that you may have in the product. And then release planning. And release planning, we've got these set of things that we want to do. Here is our backlog of all the things that we have organized. And from this backlog, we are going to groom, we're going to build these user stories, and those user stories we're going to prioritize, and then we'll get into the sprint. And then from that sprint, we are going to deliver, and this is going to come in release 10. And this one is going to come in release 11, and things like that. So that's what most people think about, as a product function, execution, which is, and then you come to the end result is a committed roadmap, right? That's what you commit to the execs, to the engineering, with other stakeholders. Up here, the skills that you need is a lot of times you need analysis, you need technical skills, because you need to understand when you're working with negotiating with engineering, you're negotiating with other stakeholders, you need to understand the space and the technology. And the last but not least, because product management is so interconnected with so many stakeholders, the part of it is the project management, stakeholder management skills. Up here, you're doing the project planning. You're looking at getting the buy-in from all the stakeholders. There is a lot of, maybe you need to go have a backroom deal with the engineering director who was upset on a call. It's like, okay, how do you go about manage that? It's selling the vision, building your own credibility, because when you go and work with engineers, if the product manager is not credible, they don't have credibility with engineers, the job becomes so much so harder. So having that credibility, being able to sell the vision to them, resolving conflicts, because some people have a very strong position and coming in and playing the middle person in this case and prioritizing appropriately. And then the end result of this should be alignment, right? So, and then if you think about it, the skills that you need as a product manager here are communication skills, a self-awareness of yourself, and then program management skills, right? So if you think about those 4 buckets, and the reason I wanted to bring this up here is these 4 buckets are important, because when we go and we want to frame the answer to the question, when someone comes in during the interview, tell me about yourself. If we have a view, I want to actually show you shortly how you can frame your answer that will say, this is where my skills actually lie. So let me pause. Questions, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take any questions. And then I want to pivot and to look at this specific one of the job roles, and then dive into that.
This is a great graph. I feel like this poster should be on a lot of VP of product office walls.
Thank you, Tom. I'm happy to share it, by the way. I'll share it.
Yeah, Gaurav, that was going to be the next question. That is it possible for you to share this with us? So thank you. And one question that I really like what you mentioned, right? Is like before an interview, you want to ask what are the things that you plan to get out of it, or like trying to address that. But see, that is a little unconventional, but really very brilliant. And I think the challenge that I'm trying to understand is, as you walk through the whole hiring process, right? You have the phone screen, well, with the HR, right? And they check out the boxes, and then you have the call with the hiring manager. At what stage, or with what stage of the interview you should be asking for that requirement from the company that you're interviewing with? Is it with the second call after the HR screen with the hiring manager, or with the larger committee? At what phase, right? Because timing is important when you are trying to make that ask.
That's a great question. I think of the hiring process as a process is like peeling the onion a little bit, right? And it's an investigative process, because what you want to do is, as you talk to the HR, ask the question, even with the HR, and HR may not have all the questions, because a lot of times HR has been given, we're looking at someone who has skills in AWS and Kubernetes and whatever it is, right? And they have also done this piece and they have done this. And so they may be looking at things in a little bit more, I would say, do you have it in a very binary fashion? But ask them a question. It's like, when you were talking with a hiring manager, what did they say? What the key thing that they are going to they're trying to solve with this role? Is there an opportunity that they want to capitalize with this specific person to come in? Is there a problem they want to solve? And the HR will give you something, and you write it down, right? And then you talk to the next person and you ask the same question, right? One of the things which I found actually quite fascinating is you come up with this list of calibrated questions ahead of the discussion as you're going to do. Ask the same question, same set of 3 or 4 questions from everybody as you meet. And as you get towards the end of the interview, depending on, you will see that sometimes in the companies, you ask the same question and you get answers which are 180 degrees apart. And then there is no alignment in this company. And when you get in, it is going to be a hard job, because you're going to be set up in a position. You're going to be asked to do something where there is no agreement on what you're supposed to do. So then you need to go to the manager and say, look, I have heard these things that I need to do. Now I want to get your perspective of what do I really need to do here, right? And sometimes you will talk to some company and you'll say, same 3 questions, whatever those questions are, which is like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the biggest opportunity? What is the untapped opportunity that you would recommend someone new that is coming in should come up and address and look at it first, right? So as you go in, and then you find that there is a coherence across the board, and then you know that the team is fully aligned. So Brajesh, to your question, I would say start with create a list of calibrated questions early, and start from the first interview. It's an investigative process, peel the onion one by one, and then you will get to a place where you will see that there is alignment in the company or there is complete misalignment. Let's see, there's something in the chat. Let me have a quick look. Okay, that's thank you, Preet. All right, so the next thing what I want to do is let's look at a job post. So I picked up something a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, from Calendly. I'm going to make this a little smaller. So if it is too small and we can't see, please let me know. So I'm going to read this a little bit together. Let's read this together. So this is a Calendly job description. Product manager enterprise. They're trying to hire for this, right? This was after 12 hours. There were 149 applicants in 12 hours. So you can actually imagine the number of people you will have after 1 week or something. So the competition is intense. So we need to really differentiate ourselves sometimes. What is Calendly? Let's leave that. Why join Calendly's product team? From here, it actually starts becoming interesting. Calendly is growing fast across the globe. We are on a mission to drive that growth forward, offer more value to our users. Our product manager for enterprise, you will directly influence Calendly's product by owning and driving strategy, roadmap, and vision that helps serve Calendly's largest teams and organizations. So what it tells you is this position, Calendly serves enterprise customers. They serve end users like you and me. We can go buy the product directly on the website. And they also support mid-sized organizations. Here, they're already telling you that you're going to work with some of their largest teams and organizations. This is truly an enterprise role. So you're going to work with their big customers. This will be a dynamic role with high demands of multitasking, things like that, that's good. You'll be working in an environment where collegial sparring is key to the best ideas. So this is a very dynamic process. You're going to have a lot of back and forth, not for faint of heart person here. You will be expected to use your creativity and bring new features and ideas to market. You will work closely with engineering, design, sales, product marketing, cross customer experience, and product leadership to ensure defined growth, product outcomes, and customer satisfaction goals are met. So these are the stakeholders. We already know product management is very cross-functional, but these are the prominent stakeholders. Engineering being, as I can imagine, number one. The design, there is a design team. As you do the they'll do the mock-ups and things like that, the wireframes. Sales will have a strong play in, it seems, because they will say, this is what the customers need. So we need these features on the roadmap. Product marketing, you talk to them for the messaging and how you're bringing the product out. Customer experience, this is probably post-sale team that they are bringing. They have some of the feedback, and then product leadership, of course, your managers and directors and the VP, you're working with them. Now, as you come in, what are some of the high impact opportunities you will tackle? These two sections here are very interesting. And what I want to do as we read through it, we'll read through these sections, and then I will bring in here the buckets that we had here, right? So we had these 4 buckets, and then we had the mission, and I'm going to take this in the next step. We're going to bucketize them into different places, and you will see how that goes. It's it seems a little mechanical, but I think result is actually pretty good. So first thing they said, drive Calendly's growth by defining vision, strategy, and roadmap as a part of our expansion into enterprise. Second, develop the product roadmap, set clear goals for the team. Number 3, efficiently execute to ship products and deliver impact for our business and users. Number 4, join forces with designers, researchers, and data scientists to explore problem space and define feature functionality. Collaborate cross-functionality with leadership, go-to-market teams, and other key stakeholders. Drive user research and analyze metrics that inform product success and health, and staying up to date on many ways our customers use Calendly to get their job done. Underneath, there is something very interesting here, but what I want to do is I want to transition here. We mentioned a product manager's role is in these buckets: vision, strategy, and research, design, execution, and stakeholder management, right? So let's start to do the bucketized piece here. So as we do the bucketization piece, I have to use the same colors. So blue being vision, strategy, and research, green being design, the orange being execution, and then up here, stakeholder management. So as I look at here, drive Calendly's growth by defining vision, strategy, and roadmap. I would say that's part of the, vision sort of a bucket, vision, strategy, roadmap. This is research. That's this piece here. Develop a product roadmap and set clear goals for the team. I'll put this into this bucket as well. And then what we see here as a part of expansion into enterprises, this was there. So I think this expansion into enterprises is the mission that this product manager has. What Calendly wants to do is they want to expand into enterprise business. They want to expand their footprint, and that's the mission. You have to sometimes read this a couple of times as you bucketize that, and it becomes a little easier when you do it a few times. Efficiently execute to ship products and deliver impact for our business users. That's execution, pure execution, right? You need to ship products and things like that. Join forces with designers, researchers, and data scientists. This is with the design piece, and explore problem space and define feature functionality. So here you're working with not only designers on the front, from the front end, how does the UI look like? You're also looking at the back end with the researchers and data scientists. It's like, what have we learned? Based on what we see in our products, there are a lot of I would assume a company like Calendly, they have a lot of analytics and data around with every click the user has on their website. They log it, and you can go back and say, I want to run some data experiments. So let's say I do this, what will happen if we did this in the past, what happens? So you talk and you work with researchers and data scientists. Collaborate cross-functionally with leadership, go-to-market teams, other key stakeholders within the company. I'll put it into stakeholder management. And then up here, drive user research, analyze metrics that inform product success, staying up to date on many ways our customers use Calendly. I'll put that in vision, strategy, and research. So far what we did was we took this whole job description, we placed it right next to it, these buckets, and we just colored them. That's all what we have done so far, right? So we came in, we are trying to bucketize, and now what we want to do is next step, we want to reframe this a little bit. So as we come in here, and I put something up in here in bold, so I'm going to actually use them as a part of reframe, which is previous experience building and monetizing modern B2B and SaaS products, shipping sizable software products that are used for working through the entire product lifecycle under deadline pressure, keen product sense, UX design experience, deep empathy for customers, highly motivated, all of that. So I'm going to actually go ahead and use this momentarily. So let's go here, and now we do the reframe. Now in the reframe, what I want to do is I have picked up this function piece here, right? So this was the first bucket. We said core functions, right? I showed you these three sort of pillars. The first pillar was their core functions. Underneath, there was recent accomplishments. On top, the mission, and this is based on the job description, I think the mission is expansion into enterprises. That's what they want us to accomplish. I put that on the top. Core function, this is a place where they ask the question, tell me about yourself. This space, once you populate, you can very easily answer that question in a way that will resonate with them. So here I'm starting to put things in my reframing, and I would say things that matter, because they said they wanted someone with 5 years of experience. I said, or some experience in SaaS companies. I would say the last 5 years are all SaaS companies. Again, if you have this, if not, we can talk about what do you do if you don't have that experience. Delivered large and hugely impactful software products, many times in a time crunch. They mentioned you have to do these things under tight timelines, right? So put up for things, that you have been in a place where there was a time crunch and you're doing this under pressure. Aligning with the core mission, work with execs and other team members to identify problem and solution space. You can have an example. I did a $5 million contribution to top of line by entering into adjacent market space, right? So this would be good. This will resonate because they would say, okay, tell me a little bit more about it. The idea here by framing you tell me about yourself is that, a lot of time people will have an approach where they say, okay, tell me about yourself. You say, well, I left my school at this point, then I joined this, then I joined that, and then I joined that, and da da da. And by the time you get there, the manager is like, okay, and they go to the next question. What you want to do is when they say, tell me about yourself, you already want to give them a set of things that say, oh, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. I want to talk about this, what you just told me. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. So essentially what you're doing, you're setting up the field in a way, and you want them to come and say, let's have a conversation about this because this is super relevant for me, right? So up here, launched a feature set, vision, strategy, and research. You would say up here, conduct user research, market and competitive research, evaluate alternatives. You could say, this is what I've done, evaluate alternatives, define and track success metrics. A lot of times in product interviews, metrics is a big question. So you should be prepared on some of the things that you've done. The outcome of this is, when you say vision, strategy, and research, crystallize planning, sketch the product roadmap, and set clear goals for the team. This is what you have accomplished, right? In design, same thing, you will come in and you will map out some of these things, closely partner with prospect, customer designers, engineers to build products, solve real customer problems, create workflows, mock-ups, conscious features, functional trade-offs that you have done, outcome is agile, rapid prototyping. Execution and delivery, again, you put all of these things there. The outcome is release planning, shipping, and accomplishing desired outcomes, and then stakeholder management. So now they come in, and up here, as you come in, you will also write some of your accomplishments here. So the hiring manager, at this very start of the interview, they ask you the question and they say, okay, Mr. X, tell me a little bit about yourself. Say, okay, thank you very much. My last 5 years of my experience I have spent in all SaaS companies. And during that, I feel I have delivered some large, hugely impactful projects, a lot of them under time crunch, right? And I think that's the case here as well. So I've done that. And as I think about, the way I approach my work, the first thing I do is to make sure that I align with the core mission of our team that I've been handed to. In my last company, my core mission was to deliver a $5 million contribution in incremental growth from a completely different market space that we were trying to enter. And I delivered on that. So that's one thing that I did. I also launched a feature set that reduced the sales friction and help us to expand into our enterprise business, and it expand by 50%. That's what I have done in my last role. And when I look at my experience, that falls into 4 buckets. One is vision, strategy, and research. And as I think about that piece, really, essentially, the work I've been doing was to make sure that we crystallize planning, we sketch the product roadmap, and there is clear goals for all the people. There is clear alignment from engineering all the way to sales and finance, and as we think about packages and all of that. As I would think about my second bucket of experience, which is design, where I closely partner with my prospects and customers and designers, I think the part of the things that I've done is I've worked together with the designers to make sure that we create the workflows and mockups. I've interacted with the customers as we did that, so we can have a close collaboration designing them. And the outcome was really, we did some agile, rapid prototyping. The third piece, as I think about the biggest piece of any product manager's experience, product manager's deliverables, are execution and delivery, and things like release planning, coming up and building the backlog, grooming the stories, working with the engineering team, and prioritization, and all of that I've done. And I've done that in cross-functional collaboration with our leadership team, engineering team, sales and marketing, and others, and close relationship with the customers. There are a few things I'm really proud of, and the couple of things that I'm really proud of are in the last, in my previous job, I've shipped a complex product in 30 days while reducing the security debt substantially. So I was really proud of that. We can double click and dive into it if you would like. And the second thing I'm also really very proud of is that I think I have a strong sense for customer experience. And I truly believe in delivering delightful customer experience. And for example, in my last role, we streamlined the workflow, and we collectively saved 10,000 customer hours per month in terms of the reduced clicks that we'll have. And that's a metric that we had set out for ourselves, that we wanted to reduce customer click hours, and we were able to save 10,000 customer hours. And that was, from a net customer experience, really a delightful experience. We got a lot of praise for work we did there. And that's a little bit about myself, right? So we will make it, we can make it a little bit succinct, but the idea is, as we go through it, we want to make sure that it is actually aligned very closely with what the company needs, and then put the stories there about your accomplishments, which are in alignment with the company's looking for. Let me pause, see if this resonates with everyone.
I have a question, if I may.
Of course.
One of the challenges that I've seen a lot of times is that, forget about that, they don't know how to interview. That's a different conversation. The job description really has nothing to do with what they're looking. In most cases, they even don't know what they're looking. And that I find to be one of the biggest challenges, that you come prepared, you look at job description, you look at the company's business, but when you're talking to the hiring manager or others, they're in completely different time and space. And in many cases, they don't know what they want. Again, I don't have an answer for it, but I thought bring it on as part of the conversation. And that's, to me, sometimes the biggest challenge.
Look, I mean, it so happens a friend of mine, he was interviewing with a company, I should not name them, and and as he was talking to their execs, he talked to the chief customer officer, and then he talked to some of the team members who were leading different functions there. And as he was going through it, he came back and he said, gosh, I don't understand. It don't feel like everybody is on the same planet. It's just people are on completely different planets, and they're expecting someone to do just one person is saying we need someone super technical who can come in, and the other person is saying we don't care if you're technical. It's like that makes no sense. So you're you will sometimes get into a place where the company is not fully aligned. It is difficult from being outside to get that alignment. But you also know if you were to get into a place like this, there is a certain degree of healthy dysfunction there. There is a dysfunction, and there are people who thrive in that high entropy environment where there is just dysfunction. They can come in and they can align everybody. They'll shine in that environment. And some people will actually thrive in an environment which is a little bit more structured. So when you come in there, my recommendation will be, there'll be a couple of recommendations I could make, right? One is, as you go in, and we will explore this in a moment here, which is about the opportunities and challenges as we think about the questions that you should ask. Uh, as you ask the question, what is, for example, you ask a question about what do you expect this person should accomplish in first 90 days, 6 months, 1 year? And you get an answer. For example, you talk to the salesperson. Salesperson would say, deliver all my features so I can have another $10 million of net sales, right? I mean, that makes sense. That'll be fine. But then you talk to the product person, then you talk to the engineering person, then you talk to some of the other stakeholders. But as you find that what they're saying doesn't align together with each other, talk to the hiring manager, during the interview process, like, hey, I'm hearing some things which seem to be little disparate. They are a bit all over the place. What's your perspective on this? And have a conversation on that. It'll actually cement you as a very sort of a person who is thoughtful and someone who is ready to actually go and ask a difficult question. Let them come back and say, look, I know we have a little bit of a dysfunction. This is how I would probably, if you were to be hired, this would be my set of prioritization. Okay, that's good. Uh, in terms of other stakeholders, when they interact, how much influence they have on this? So I understand this will be our plan. How much influence they have? Do they have the ability to disrupt this plan? How do you typically cope up when there are demands, competing demands? Let the hiring manager answer that question, and then you will see, and um, sometimes it can be hard when you're working with a leader. There is dysfunction and you're working with a leader who's not very strong. Then you put yourself and you set yourself in a position where there's not a lot of success to be had. Ali, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And you had another point that maybe wasn't, I want to underline specifically, was it's not just answering the questions that somebody's putting in front of you, but frequently what separates out the top candidates are they have really interesting questions to throw back. And so the best candidates that I've interviewed have asked very pointed questions about things that they've observed or other thoughts that they've had looking at the business, and asking detailed questions back, rather than just waiting for the interviewer to pop a particular question. There's two questions that are in the chat that popped up. One was a little bit earlier, so you may have missed it. They were asking a little bit around, and you touched on, if you don't have exactly the 5 years experience, but you have some related experience and you like, well, it's really 4 years, but then I did some related things. Any commentary around that?
Thank you. That's definitely a great question. Look, it is difficult as someone, as someone who has been on the other side and both sides of the table. Um, as a hiring manager, I also know when, for example, when we have candidates, sometimes very hard to find someone who will check all the boxes. It's just sometimes not possible because you want to put everything that you need and you may not have that, right? But on the other hand, the piece of it is there may be people who have all of them, and that puts you into at a disadvantage if you don't have it. Because if you look at this job up here, in 12 hours, 150 applicants. So you have a lot of competition here. So what do you do when you don't have all the experience that aligns with it? The key is the person on the other side, they are trying to accomplish certain outcomes through you. And let me tell you a story. So uh, about a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we were hiring for a specific role. Um, I had interviewed a lot of candidates. We had not made a hire, and then there's a lady. She interviewed with us, and we were looking for someone who was a little bit more technical in that role. She was not super technical, but then her story that when I talked to her, her story was so compelling. She's been a single mom. She actually came in. She learned some of the things about computers, and then she's learned some of the other technology pieces. And as talking to her, I was just really blown away with the grit this lady had. And I felt that it doesn't matter, what we really throw at her with her grit and the level of, the level of, and her people skills, she would really be successful. So I talked to my boss. I said, look, I mean, I think she doesn't have all what we need here. And we have some candidates who seem a little bit more appealing. I think I'm going to go with my gut, and we're going to make an offer to her. And we made an offer to her, and we hired her, and she was very successful, right? So I say this. What I mean, the backdrop of the story is you as a hiring manager, there is a certain outcome you want to accomplish, right? Some of the things that are there, 5 years of experience on this, some of these, and all of that, that can be guidelines, right? And as you look at them, you would say, look, I don't have 5 years experience in this, but let me tell you some of the things that I have done, which are very, very similar to this. And then you go and position yourself. There is one thing that I would say, that in the product management field, there are two lines of thinking, and there is this sort of sometimes visceral debate. Uh, some companies want people who are super technical, and some companies who want people who are not as technical, but they can get very close to the user, right? They can get closer to the end consumer and understand from the end consumer perspective, and they are really good project managers, and they can do some of those things. Now, as you think about a role where you say, look, I don't have the technical experience, and they are looking for a former programmer, a former developer, don't go for that role, because the problem you might run into is there is such a huge delta. Unless you're willing to commit to go in and just like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to spend this time upfront and later, but that could be a recipe for getting into some place, even if through your stories and narrative you manage to get it, that you may find it that it was not worth it, right? So again, that's a determination you may have to make. Is it worth taking this role? And even if I have a delta, and if the answer is yes, then frame your experience and say, look, I mean, I don't have this, but frame it in a way that they're looking for things in these buckets, right? And they're probably the HR might say something like, do you have 5 years of experience, something like that. You would say, yes, I have 3 years of experience in this, but these two, the other 2 years, I didn't have the formal title, but I did the jobs. I did the job which was primarily like this, right? So if you have something like that, that may satisfy them. But I would say, look, I mean, make a judgment based on if the delta is too huge, it may or may not be worth it. Hopefully that answered the question.
Good, great. The other question, Dan Lee had a great question. He was asking about are there any nuances or variances based on the level of the job? So going from a PM to a senior PM to a VP of product or team leader.
Um, Look, I think what happens is as you move into the leadership position at the ground, when you're in the trenches, of course, your scope of work is a little bit narrower. Your deliverables are a little bit narrower. But as you transition into more leadership roles, some of the things that become a little bit more important are things such as where do you think the market will be in 5 years, right? So you become a little bit more, you're looking at things from a little bit more broader perspective. You can still use the framework. I think uh, if you think about product interviews and you think about product interviews, for example, in Google and some of the other places, there are certain kind of things that people may say. For example, if you're at a ground level, you're coming in, you may have a question which is like, tell me a question around estimation. Think about how many soccer balls are in the US, right? And a product manager, you come in, you think about certain mathematical equation, you make some assumption, you come in, And that's what you expect at a product manager level, that they will be able to look at some of this data and be analytical and be able to come up with the equation and give you the number, right? As you go up in the chain, the idea how many soccer balls are in the US, someone underneath your team should be able to figure that out, because assuming you hire the right people. But now your focus is within this is, how do I set up a system by which all of this can function seamlessly, from a team perspective? How do I think about this product management function? And if you, for example, you're an exec, you say, look, I think about the product management function based on these 4 buckets. And based on these 4 buckets, I think what my goal is to make sure right people are in the right skill sets, are in the right chairs, and we have a workflow that they can do, and we can keep our team motivated. And as we go in, we are as a team, we are working as a cohesive unit delivering on our deliverables. So hopefully that makes sense, Dan. It's just, I think your elevation changes.
Dan said thanks.
Awesome, thank you. All right, any other questions? And if not, I'll transition into the other parts of the framework. Okay, so let's transition into other parts of the framework. As you go in up here, as I mentioned, there are different stakeholders that you're going to interact with, right? And the question when you're talking, for example, with a salesperson, or if you're talking, for example, to the engineering leader, so let's say you're in an interview, now you're talking to the engineering leader, the question really in the back of the mind of this person is, why should I support your candidacy? So let's say there are 4 people, they talk to 4 folks. And in order for them to say, I support this person, they will support this person if you can walk in their shoes, right? And that you can understand what they actually go through, and you can take in, again, on not being on the opposite side of the table. If you can get on the same side of the table, look at a problem and just work into that mode, we're solving things together, right? So as you start thinking about your, well, if let's say you're going to be in front of the panel, you're going to talk to some of the folks, for example, you're going to talk to engineering, or you're going to talk to the go-to-market teams, which could be marketing or sales or pre-sales or executives, post-sales, customers, any of this. If they are on your interview panel, I would say uh, change your perspective a little bit and say, look, I mean, if I'm working with an engineering leader, what are the kind of things that engineering and product work together? Engineering and product, when they work together, but part of it is that, a product manager really needs to understand what direction the product is going. They need to come in and I need to make sure that they have a clear set of priorities. A lot of times the engineering gets frustrated because the product manager comes in, the pressure comes, and priorities keep changing. And the engineering, all of a sudden, as a result, they just it feels like they're spinning their wheels very, very quickly and not getting somewhere. So if you understand that part of the world with the stakeholder you're working with, frame your question, frame your answers in the sense like, I understand that piece, and there are questions you can anticipate some of these questions. How do you prioritize? The question behind that is, when you come in and the pressure is on, how do you hold your ground and at the same time have a justification and work through it so you can protect my team, right? So if you can answer some of those questions, it'll show you that you're a good candidate. In addition, what I would say is underneath here, what you should also do is opportunities and challenges. What you at the end of the interview, sometime early in the interview, they will say, what questions do you have for me? So if you go in and this is your opportunity, a lot of times when you're talking to, let's say, the engineering leader or something, you can ask a question. It's like, how does the product and engineering organization today ensure we're hitting the bullseye in one go? And then one principle about these questions is ask the question, and then pause and sit back. Let the other person answer the question, so give them the opportunity to answer the question. How do you do it in first time? And they will say, look, I mean, we don't do it really a good job. It's like, why not? What's holding you back? Like, oh, we have the prioritization. Oh, okay. And who brokers some of these decisions? And as you do that, they will understand that, what that you sort of understand what's happens in their world. You may have a question: how is the product team supporting the engine of growth, product-led growth? So if you're talking to the VP of product, you're talking to the chief product officer. It's like, there is if you look around the industry, there is a strong focus on product-led growth. How do we support that today up here? How do we do that, right? How do we bring in the customer's voice into this product? How do we actually go in and deliver on things that customers can't even imagine today, right? I shine in a high entropy environment. How does the team resolve competing priorities, right? And as you have these sort of calibrated questions, you will come in, you will shine. And to Rajesh's question that he had asked, how do you go about it? Ask these questions every time, every person, and you will get some insights, right? And as you get these insights, you'll formulate some thoughts. If you have some time between your interviews, I would say as you write this down, write the answers down, and take some time, write down your thoughts, how you would approach it. Then you come into the next discussion, you will appear much more thoughtful because you have had a time to really think through some of these things. The last pillar that I want to really bring up here is the results, your value proposition. And the question, in every interviewer's mind, whether it is the direct, your hiring manager, skip level manager, or anybody you're talking is, why should we hire you? What's your value proposition? Oh, yes, we are talking. What will you be able to do for me, right? And here you can come up, with set of things. What you have to essentially do is you need to go and things that are going to resonate, bubble up things that are relevant for this specific function. So for example, you may come up with a revenue executive. Look, I have the business savvy and I'm collaborative. And in the last project, I delivered a $5 million in my incremental revenue. And this tells if you're talking to, let's say, chief revenue officer, they will care about this piece, right? That is the piece you probably want to bubble up and see that your interview discussion centers around it. If you're talking to engineering, it could be, look, I'm able to do some of these things myself. I sketch certain things together. I worked with the designer. I came back to when I come back to the engineering, it is set a specification. We work together. I believe in sort of technically sound, rapid prototyping, clear specs, and user stories, which are very, very clear for the engineering team to go ahead and execute, right? If you're talking with your chief product officer, right, some of the things that you can, for example, highlight, it's like, I set up my customer advisory board in the last role. And as I was doing that, it was we derived our top 10 customer requirements. Instead of us thinking about what are top 10, I built a customer advisory board that helps us figure out what feature request we want to actually go ahead and work on, right? And things like that. So, what is your unique value proposition in relationship with the stakeholder that you're working with? Before the interview, try to highlight that. Every time you will highlight that, there will be a question which is a believability gap that they're going to have. It's like, tell me more. I don't know if I truly believe you. And this is where your stories will come in. You will say, this is how I did. Have a narrative. There is a very good framework in the sense of STAR, where you say, this was the situation, this was the task, this was the action, this was the result that I actually did. So when someone comes in and says, look, tell me about a time when you really, you helped with revenue, one of the revenue projects as a project manager, a product manager. It's like, yeah, so let me talk about the time when we were working on this. The situation was this. The company was trying to get into this space. Space is super competitive. We have not been in this area. And as we are thinking about getting in this area, we have our own doubts. So what I did was I said, okay, let me do some user research. And after the user research, I came up with a certain set of hypotheses. And I said, if this hypothesis holds true, we may have a viable set of things. And so what we came up, I went in, I talked to some of our data scientists. I said, let's put this experiment, do some A/B testing on our user interface. We did that. Based on that, we came in, here was the data that supported my hypothesis. We came in, we built a prototype. Based on that prototype, we came in, we tested it, we launched it, and then the result was eventually we got a $5 million uplift, right? So you can build a narrative like that, much more compelling. And again, I'm not suggesting you make things up. What I'm saying is, if you have things that you have done, structure them in a certain way that becomes easy to consume. So that's the last piece I wanted to bring up. Again, let me pause and see if there are questions.
And feel free to either unmute or throw it to the chat window. We can do either or. I like your comment about kind of structuring things in the way that people need to understand them. Frequently, people explain things in the order that it's in their head, and if it's not in that order for the audience, it just doesn't land from a communication standpoint. And that applies even outside of interviewing when you're trying to explain, value propositions or what your product does to a potential customer. If you're not using their own framework back at them and mirroring the information into the structures they already have, that frequently it doesn't land well.
Indeed, indeed. That is very true. I think sometimes just taking a moment to string things together, and especially for an interview, if you strung things together, it becomes so much easier to consume. And you may be able to deliver something very quickly. Uh, there is a question from Gaurav. Gaurav, we share the name, first name, of course. Like you said, don't make up, but there can be sometimes situation which one can pull out a use case from their past experience. So how to go about that and just be honest about it. Look, I mean, that's a great question. Um, what you want to do is you want to demonstrate parallel skill sets, right? So, to give you an example, someone says, look, and sometimes it could be a very direct question in a sense. Look, do you have an experience with container orchestration? And I'm just being very specific on this one. Let's say you don't have container orchestration experience, and you have some experience with containers. So, say, look, I mean, I have experience with containers, and I am able to do certain this kind of things and demonstrate that you have the basic skill set, foundational skill sets to very quickly come up to speed. And on the container orchestration, I'm super fascinated by this area, and I would love to double click and come back onto it. In some cases, there just may not be something that you have, and you have to accept it that this I just don't have that skill set. When I look at the when I look at applying for the interviews, well, there are two approaches, right? One approach is you go and hit 100 companies, and you go in and it's like it's a volume game. It's like I'm going to apply for 100 positions, and out of that 100, it's a funnel approach, and then out of 100 I'm going to get 10 people. 10 of them are going to respond, two of them I'm going to interview, or five of them I'm going to interview well, and then one of them I'm going to get offer, right? That's one way. I find that super exhausting. I would say there is validity in that approach. Yes, you can of course do it. There's no right or wrong that way. But on the other hand, I think what you want to do is, as you look at these opportunities, you want to look at two things. One is, here's a set of opportunity, on this place where that I can apply, and I think I have a good overlap of my skill set, and I can deliver value as soon as I can come in. And here I have a gap, but I can actually overcome that gap with some work. Uh, when you look at some of these job descriptions, let's say you it's I would say rarely, and it should not happen very frequently, they have listed things out already. They're like, I'm looking for this experience, I'm looking for that experience. Take some time before the interview, go to YouTube, do your research, understand that, double click that. So when you get into the interview where they come in, it's like, look, I mean, I want to understand this. um, you should be in a position to say at least that I have tangential understanding for the role, that you're truly committed, and the gap is not too wide. If the gap is too wide, someone is looking for a technical product manager, and the person on the other hand, you have not been technical product manager, I would not recommend that. But if it's a bridgeable gap, I would say do some research. And let's say you're in an interview and they asked a question that came out of left field, and you were not able to answer that question. It's like, look, I mean, I don't know much about this. I'm truly committed to learn about this. After the interview, take some time. It's like, hey, I took some time and spent some time on this, and I'm really fascinated by this, and I'm committed to go in and do this. In the last 24 hours, I have consumed 8 hours of content on this, and I am willing to do much more. So if you go back to the hiring manager with this, if someone came to me and say, and they said, I have not, I don't know much about this, but they came back and they said, look, since we have spoken over the weekend, I consumed 10 hours of content on this, and I think I'm in a much better shape now. I would be very willing to say, okay, let's re-engage probably with that person, because it just shows that you have the commitment to do it.
The other thing, just adding on to that, is when you are trying to bridge it, there's a couple of different axes, because depending on what they're asking for, you may have a similarity that's based on technology. So, well, I haven't worked with um, cell phone networks, but I have a lot of experience with Wi-Fi, or, so you may have some technology similarity. You may have similar problems that you've solved of, okay, well, the main customer problem is, encryption, and I've done that in a completely different environment. Or you may have a solution that you've come up with, or a process that is applicable. So you can take this similarity several different ways. I've seen a lot of people look at the similarity and say, well, I haven't touched that particular technology. But the smart ones will come back and say, I've solved a very similar problem in a different technology. And I think this experience is relevant because, we also had a problem with, securing this thing, or with, whatever the customer problem is, and demonstrate some level of similarity from that level. So there's another question came in from Preet. Knowing their framework was a really good idea, wondering how important it is to try to give strategy questions answer in context to the space of the company we're applying to.
Look, I think it is very important to understand the context and space which we are applying, and I think most of the times we have the time to do this, some of the upfront work. I'll go to their website, I'll do some research, I'll figure out who the competitors are, what space they're operating. I'll form my own hypothesis on what they are actually looking for. And as we go in, I will go in with a certain set of hypotheses as I go talk to those people, right? So, because if you don't, if your questions, if your answers context is completely divorced from in which they operate, so they are an IT company and your context is manufacturing, it's not going to blend, right? So I think it is incumbent on us to do some research, understand what the context is, come up with a hypothesis, and say, look, I mean, based on this is how I would validate certain things, I would invalidate certain things, and then go back with that. Pretty good question. Thank you.
Vivek had another question. He was saying, how can one change the dynamic of the interview from the interviewer kind of asking you and then responding to how do you get that in more of a conversational model? If you have any tips on that, or getting interviewers out of the kind of interrogation type of mode, as Asim mentioned.
Look, I think one thing we have to understand is that there are some companies, when you go into the interviewer has been given a rubric, and part of it is the companies want to eliminate the bias out of the interview process. So, and especially it may happen with some of the larger companies. You're going to go and talk to AWS, they're going to talk about their 16 principles, right? And you can imagine that those questions, and even if you have your framework and all of that, I still recommend we do all of this. The reason is because you'll be able to frame conversations, but know that there are questions that they have to ask, because that's just the process they have, right? But I feel that being proactive early on with the discussion, most of the times we would know, who we are going to talk to. I would look at their background. I would look from where they are, which school they went to, all that sort of a thing. So we can have a discussion. We can have a little bit of an icebreaker in the beginning. I would send them an email early on, and with all, I tend to, when I talk to people, I'd say, look, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. That's top of mind. What is there? And a lot of time people will not respond, and that's okay. Like, and start your conversations like, hey, I sent out an email. You may have flown under the radar completely, no problem. But as I was thinking about, there was something, these are top of mind for me. I'm sure there are things top of mind for you as well. Let's talk about it. What's top of mind for you? Something like that. So, you could probably make it conversational, but just know, when you talk to some of these larger companies, there is a set of things. They gotta ask those things, because if they don't, then they just can't take out the bias out of the system. And sometimes now, not a lot of people are hiring, but in the past, they're hiring a lot of people. So they just can't have people going off different tangents. Hopefully that makes sense. What is valued more in companies, tech skills or communication skills? Some value communication skills more than others in leadership roles. Tech skills, not so much. What are your thoughts? Um, I think, look, I mean, the communication skills is one of those fundamental base level things. Doesn't matter what place, what role you're in. Of course, with some of the dev roles, you can get away with not being stellar at communication. But other than that, or maybe you're a dev or a QA person, I think you can get away without communication skills. But a role like product management, right? You need to have communication skills. You need to have skills where you can influence without authority. You don't have any direct reports, right? You're working with the engineering team and you're influencing the engineering director, engineering manager, engineering VP. So, communication is the base level you have. But yes, there are companies where you would say, we need a tech PM. And there are companies that would say we need a product manager who does, who doesn't need to be as technical. They need to be more around understanding the workflows, and they need a business PM. And in some companies, they will have both the functions. They would say a TPM, technical program manager or technical product manager, will work together with the business PM. So, and I think there is no, it's just some companies, this is how they are set up. And there's some other companies, they are different, set up in a different way. So just know, coming from outside, there is just not much you can do about it. If it is a company that is looking for a technical PM, then they're looking for a technical PM. And if you're not technical, it's not going to work. On the other hand, if you're not technical and your company who's not looking for a technical PM, but they're looking for someone who's a business PM, but you are technical also in addition to business, that will probably work for them. So, I think it's just every company have a certain way, and most of the time people are very determined and they have a very strong opinion that their approach is the right approach, and they will go with that. And I hope that makes sense for you.
Thank you. Great answer.
You're welcome.
All right, any additional questions? We're getting through our list. We're at the bottom of the list, so if not, we will go into a wrap up and a summary. If you'd like to leave us with a kind of a wrap up and things to think about, and maybe some action items.
Look, I think what Tom, I would say is I'll share this framework. I'll share this PDF with you. I'll share also the presentation. If people have questions, I'm happy to answer. If product interviews can be, we talked about very generic sort of a piece here. A lot of product interviews can be very, very specific in the sense, you may have questions around estimation questions. So just know that, sometimes when you're going in, there are bucket of questions, which could be estimation question, which is like, tell me how many visitors you will have on Eiffel Tower. How many visitors they get every month. So you need to have a framework around numbers and things like that. Tell me how many soccer balls. Tell me what are the HelloFresh, which is a company does the meal service. What are the earnings? So know that so you should be prepared for those kind of questions as well. So, and then there will be analytical questions where they would say, if we were to save to figure out a way by which Best Buy needs to reduce their abandoned cart by 10%, how are you going to do that? Now they're trying to think, they're trying to see how do you approach this from mathematical, from a user perspective, and how do you really look at a situation and parse it. We want to help customers understand the risk of infrastructure breach, right? So how will you go about that? There'll be causation questions that you might get. We are seeing a decline in X metric for Y company. We're seeing that the number of users have plummeted in 20% in the last 1 week for this company. The DoorDash is experiencing 20% decline in their orders. How would you go about figuring out what's going on, right? So that's the third bucket. And then there are finally, I should say, there are classic product management questions that you should be also prepared with us. And that some of that may happen at a higher level, which is share with us your 5-year vision of the API security space. So if you're in API security, tell us where the industry is going, 5 years, where it will be. What do you think we should be doing in order to sort of be on the bleeding edge of this curve? It could be something, some people may have some design a toothbrush for dogs, design a smart chair, design television, other feature, things like that. So I would say there are those 4 buckets. In addition to this simple framework here, Think about estimation questions, think about analytical questions, causation questions, and there's classic product management questions, also something that you may run into. Mohan asked a question, can you explain some of the ruthless prioritization techniques with examples? I think there was a separate talk, Tom, I saw, if I'm not mistaken, about ruthless prioritization.
We, yeah, we've had a few talks around kind of feature prioritization. There's some of them were value-based, some of them were customer, um, like customer discovery type exercises. From an interview perspective, if somebody's saying, how do you prioritize one from another, like those are the two things that pop up, kind of finding out the additional data that you need to know, and then what you went through. Oh, that may be, Teresa was saying that may be a potential workshop topic as well. Certainly, there's a lot of focus at the beginning of the year on KPIs and metrics and feature prioritization and how all that ties together. So. Any of that ring a bell?
Look, I mean, I have a certain point of view. I know there was some chat about it. I personally think, when you lead with hypothesis based approach, where you say, look, I don't want to, let's say there is prioritization and there is pressure for someone, whoever that pressure is. You can come back and you say, look, the reason what we have is for our product roadmap, because you need to be in a position where you can justify what you have, and an approach where you actually very early on set up your mindset and set up the way you operate. And there are two things here. One is in terms of operation, you say, look, the way we operate, and then you align with your boss, is we're going to come up with a set of hypotheses. With those hypotheses that we come up, we'll decide how do we validate or invalidate our hypothesis. So we will say, this is our goal. These are the actions we're going to take in order to do that. We'll have a certain set of metrics, and then we evaluate those. And as a part of this process, we'll come up with what we are trying to do. This is for a new product kind of a thing, right? And any requests that are coming in, we want to look at those requests based on the merit. Do we have a viable hypothesis that we can come up with? And at any given point in time, we can go and do this, right? So that's one way to approach it. The second thing I would say is in here is having a very clear decision matrix, right? You'd say the way we make decisions around here are this: have the transparent communication ahead of time. So when people come to you and it's like, hey, we got to prioritize this one over the other, it's like, okay, let's think about, here's our matrix. This is our rubric. Let's see where does it stand. And then you come in and it's like, look, I mean, it's not about you and me. It's just, this is how we go about. And it could be a question which could come from customer, right? If customer comes in, it's like, we need this prioritized. If you have a decision matrix, you can say, this is how we go about making decisions. And that's why we are not prioritizing this right now, because you have this ability to do it. The third piece I would say is, as a product person, you could set up something, because you will run into this product prioritization conflict sometimes. Pick up the stakeholders, the key stakeholders from the organization. You could pick up a stakeholder from sales, from executives, and say, look, once a month we want to come together. We're going to make some decisions, but we want to come in front of the product committee and make sure that our decisions, things that are inherently, let's say there's conflict or something, come to the committee and let the committee make the decision. So in that case, you can sort of move that to some of senior stakeholders, make that decision from that standpoint.
See, one final question back would be, if you get a question that throws you for a loop, or there are 3 possible ways you could answer it, sometimes I've seen people latch on to the first thing and they spin out a complete answer and they realize, oh, wait a minute, you were looking at this the other way, and they don't realize that until they've gotten home after the interview. So we're advice for A, not letting that get you derailed, and B, kind of checking in and saying, okay, so I could see this question could possibly be going 3 ways. Do you mean A, B, or C? And do you have any other similar thoughts around kind of restarting and not getting derailed, and then checking in to make sure you're not out in left field?
You, that's a great question, Tom. And what I would say is it's for the, I think this is one of the power techniques in a sense. There are people, you go in an interview, you ask a question, they will give you an answer, right? So that's, of course, what is expected, and that makes sense. But then there are people who you talk to them, it's like, okay, let me pause for a second. Let me just clarify this for a second. So, and you'll paraphrase or something, what you're looking for. And you have to do this within a reason, because every question you start paraphrasing, a person is going to lose their mind. So you don't want to do that with every question, but they ask something, what is your approach and thinking about this? It's like, okay, let me just see. So what you want to do is, our goal is this. And as we think about this goal, is there something that you are trying to, why is this important? Whatever it is. So the person who's asking questions typically has more power than the person who's giving the answers. And as a person who is being interviewed, you can have more power in the question by asking another question. Again, do it in reason. So I think um, getting a question, very quickly jumping on a train and going down the track and figuring out, oh gosh, I'm moving in they were asking go north, I'm going south, right? That happens because you're in a rush. I think take your time, before the interview, pause, breathe, ask the clarifying question. It's like, well, let me just understand what you're trying to come up from here. And then, you can go back and clarify that. And it will happen sometimes. The second thing I want to say is, when you talk to someone, um, during the interview, you could take a position. It's like, okay, I think these are the three things, and I think this is the right thing, and that kind of a thing. That opens you up to a place where you could be completely wrong, right? And you may find, oh gosh, that didn't make any sense as I'm thinking about it. The other way to do it is, as you're thinking about it, it's like, okay, let me explain my thinking here. I'm thinking about this like this. If I bucket this, if I think about this, so what you're asking me is this and this and this. And as I process this through, is there anything else? Does this make sense? And then, you clarify with them, as I'm thinking, am I thinking it right? Am I missing something? And then they give you some answers like, no, I think, what about this? Oh, okay. So I got this also. And then you synthesize and then you give an answer. So uh, I think slowing down instead of rushing through is a power technique. Slow down a little bit and slow them down too, if you can.
Excellent, excellent. So with that, I think we've come to the end of our set of questions. And I thank everyone for attending this evening, but I especially want to thank Gaurav for his fantastic thoughts and sharing his wisdom acquired from many years in the trenches of product management. If if you have coworkers who missed this session who could take advantage of it, we will have the recording posted on our YouTube channel, probably within the next couple of weeks here. So looking forward to that. And we are working on lining up our speakers for February and our calendar for the year. So stay tuned. And we look forward to announcing our February speakers soon. But once again, thank you, Gaurav. This was a fantastic session. I can see a lot of great comments in the chat window, and I'll share those with you afterwards if any get cut off. But thanks very much for your time, and this has been especially helpful for all of our attendees and people that will be watching it later on YouTube as well.
Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. I truly enjoyed the session. Thanks very much.
Likewise. All right, we'll see
Thank
you
you.
all soon, and
Bye.
talk to you in February. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.